Indylive.radio.
Regular listeners to the Clacks WFI podcast will notice two differences this week. First of all, I'm clearly not Fiona, and I won't be trying to do an impression of her either. I'm Finn, and the baton has been handed over to me for this week for putting the podcast together. So, as they say, bear with. The second change is that the format of Clacks WFIs, Coffee and Cuppa remains the same, but with a notable addition of Dr David McKeever, who is currently exploring writing a book on the Scottish independence movement and had heard the WFI Clacks podcast on Indylive.radio. He then contacted us and asked if he could ask us a few questions about what we had been getting up to and how we got started. And as we know, the WFIs like to chat, but I am glad to say that they did let Dave get a word in edgeways. So let's hand over to the Clacks WFIs for when the WFIs met Dave.
Somebody want to fill me in on where the idea for Women for Independence Clack Manager came from?
Well, that would be why I'm here. Oh gosh, right. Women for Independence Clack Manager was started by myself and my sister. I'm an SNP member. My sister is not. She's not a member of any political party. She doesn't want to engage with it that way. So we wanted to do our bit. You know, we had some ideas about things that we wanted to do, but we didn't really want to go through SNP structures. We didn't want to go through all the yes group structures. We just wanted to get in and make stuff happen. We just wanted to get on with it. So we were aware that Women for Independence already existed as a sort of national thing, and that there was groups all over the place. So we got in touch with them to say, is there a Women for Independence group in Clack Manager? There was not. So we said, right, okay, do we get to just call ourselves that and be that? And they're like, yeah, sure. They provided us with logos and banners and stuff, which they'd already put together in the hopes that somebody would be there. So we started calling ourselves Women for Independence. We put up a Facebook page. We started calling ourselves that and started organising things. Mostly just so that we could do our own thing. Also, the ideas that we both had quite young children at the time. I think our kids were, 2014, how old were the kids? Be sort of 5 to 7 years old at that point. So our kind of focus at that time was for women, particularly women with children, and the effects of, the problems that they saw at that present time and how independence could help them with that. And we wanted to focus on those issues, and we also wanted to focus on doing things that women, particularly women with children, could be involved with. So we did stuff like there was a Yes Hub here that was set up, but we organised sort of child-friendly drop-in sessions where you could bring your kids along and still come and have your questions asked and talk to people. And we got an area with toys set up, and we tried to focus on that. We did leafleting, and we did, again, we went leafleting up the main street to try and speak to women rather than men. We found a lot of interesting reactions when we were trying to hand out a leaflet, and you get a couple coming along together, and man would put his hand out for a leaflet and we'd say no, and we'd give it to his wife or partner or whoever he was with, and they'd look a bit shocked at that. And I said, but we're Women for Independence, that's who we're here to talk to. And we got a lot of good reactions out of that, actually. A lot of good feedback. We did some other things. We organised a car cavalcade because we like them. We brought our kids to stuff. What else did we do? We organised some other events. We had Women for Independence. I can't remember what we called it. It was like chat and cocktails. We had cocktails, and we had an NHS doctor, Katrina, what's her name, Pagliari, something like that, who came along and spoke at that for us. But again, it was a women's event. We never didn't let men in, but it was a women's event. And we had other events and things that we organised in the run-up to the referendum as well. And then we were represented at the referendum itself. that's how we started.
Brilliant. Thanks very much. Can I push you on it a wee bit? Would you mind explaining to me why you chose to organise under the banner of Women for Independence rather than Yes Scotland or the SNP?
Well, because partly because that's where our focus is, because it was women's issues that were our focus, and we're women. So that's kind of what we're looking for, and also because we didn't. We kind of felt at that time there was a lot of structures and committees, and you'd have to go through umpteen different people to ask if it was all right to do something and who would want to organise it, and half a dozen different people would have their say about whether it was to be done like this or to be done like that. And my sister and I are quite used to sort of working with each other. We go through 3 layers of committees and other people saying it was all right, so we just did it. I mean, we fetched up at the S Hub and said, right, we're now Women for Independence Club Manager. Anybody was welcome to be involved, and didn't, as we went along, more and more people got involved in the group, which was brilliant. As you see, it's still rolling along bigger than ever now. Anybody in, they just appeared, which was good. Every time we ran a thing, more people appeared, more faces arrived and said, can we do something, can we help, and brought their own ideas, and it all expanded up from there. So it wasn't really a recruiting procedure of any sort.
Maybe 2-3 years that I joined Women for Independence, and it's just I met people at other events we were at, be it marches or things like that, and we had common interests and common issues and common viewpoints. So that's when I joined Women for Independence.
I should join up. There was a time then I didn't be involved in any of the things, but then I've come back again. Like last year, I came back again and started becoming more involved in things.
We knew a fair few of the people who got involved, because it was people that we knew who came along, but and because I was, myself and my mum have been SNP for a long time.
Very good.
I've known some of the people within this chat, but it wasn't necessarily to do with political movements. Some of it has been to other things in the community. I know Anne because she was an old neighbour of ours, and I've actually known Tracy because she was involved in a community group, and I have known Lorraine for a while because she's also a neighbour.
Well, that's cracking. That makes a lot of sense.
I think for me joining this, it was Lynn's that suggested to me to come along, and I've only been coming along since January, since the start of the year. For me, really, it was about a way to sort of get involved in the local area, because for a long time I lived away from the local area, although I'm from here. And because I still work in Edinburgh, I don't actually have all that big a social circle at home. So it's quite nice for me to actually meet some new people in my local area where I had kind of lost touch. So that was quite good. But also I think as well, the sort of direct democracy part of it, I totally feel, if you're thinking about Westminster, there's very little democracy. There's not really very much that you can do about the situation, whereas I think Holyrood is a completely and utterly different kettle of fish. I think people are actually actively encouraged to take part in the democracy that's in Scotland.
We don't see it as work. It's a passion.
It's a hobby. No resto, yes.
It's a good point though. Somebody who came and spoke to us before to sort of interview us about what we did and stuff kept talking about us as being about what we were doing as volunteering, and how do you work your volunteering, and how do you, one of the questions we were asked was, how do you reward yourself for your volunteering? Do you have spa days? And we were really bemused by that question, because it's like, it's not volunteering, it's activism. It's not because we've got tons of spare time and we're looking for things to do. It's because there's stuff that needs done, and somebody has to do it.
If we don't do it, who will, Susan? If we don't do it, who will?
Absolutely. Exactly.
Yeah. See what
It's
I
not,
thought when Lynn said that.
it's not, I mean, well, it's really enjoyable and a lot of fun and a lot of really good times doing it, but it's done because it needs doing and not because we're, bored and looking for a side activity.
Okay, but it's hard work.
There we go. Sorry, I'll shut up again.
No, you're right.
I don't shut up. No. But it allows you to keep true to your principles as well, though, which I think more and more in these times is exceptionally important. And some people are very much struggling with that as well. But these kind of communities, if you want to call them that, allow people to do that. But they also allow each other to challenge each other, but perhaps in a safer place where you know that you're not actually going to be able to talk crap. You have to be able to back things up. But a safe community to do.
I think there's lots of different ways of different kind of independence groups making their presence felt in a positive way, not in a kind of in your face type of way. So there's another group called Bridges for Indy. I don't know if you've heard of them. So they basically stand on bridges and wave their flags. So you have vehicles traveling under the bridges, seeing people standing on the bridges with their flags. And it's just a kind of, I think through our mainstream media, you get the impression that we're a tiny minority of people, and we need to make other people that are maybe thinking, well, actually, I'd like to find out more about independence, but I'm worried about it because nobody else is interested in it. And we're saying, actually, there are a lot of people interested in it. And I've done a Bridges for Indy event where you stood on the bridge with a flag, and the reaction you get, I've done several, and as time has gone on, it's been more and more a positive response to it. You get the trucks going underneath, putting their horns, people waving to you, and like Lorraine says, you get the occasional person making a rude gesture, and the reaction to that is we blow them kisses. So, because they obviously need loved. So it's just different things like that. And I wouldn't say I'm exclusively Women for Independence. I'm an SNP member. I'm a member of Yes Clackmannanshire.
And the Yes Bikers as well. I just want to don't forget the Yes Bikers, Lorraine, because we think this is like soft engaged face. You're just saying, if people want to walk by and ignore it, fine. If people want to give us rude gestures, that hub that Susan and her family started off in Alloa was hugely important, because that was a gravitational point, getting to know people. I've got a business premises in Clackmannan, which is not far from Alloa. So we set up a mini hub in the weeks in the run up to the vote. We just gave over the place to the hub. I thought, this is too important. I just put this over. And that was another thing that quite surprised me, because a lot of my customers are quite posh, and I thought, am I going to alienate all my customers? No, we recruited. I recruited the secretary of my branch, SNP, was my customer. And she came in and we started talking about it, and she's now secretary of our branch. So just people that open their eyes and go, no, we don't have a democracy when, we don't have a democracy. This devolution doesn't work. And I think it doesn't, if you've got the slightest bit of imagination and start thinking about it, and people do.
We still have
that sort of softer engagement.
Anyway, the softer engagement is good, and I think after the last referendum, people were more happy to talk about politics. Before it being kind of a bit of a hot potato, and people are much happier now to talk about it. People are more aware of what's going on, but there's still a lot of people that don't know what's devolved and what's not. So we're still getting people saying, the SNP should have done that, they should have done this. You have to keep pointing out to them. And I mean, you get the press asking First Minister's briefings questions, and she's still having to point out that it's a reserved matter. Sometimes her own MSPs make comments and she has to point out it's a reserved matter. That's not in my gift to do that. And I think people are beginning to see now, when they're saying we should be doing this and we should be doing that, why has Nicola Sturgeon not controlled the borders? Well, she can't. That's a reserved matter. And then you get people going, oh, right. So somebody else is doing that for us. Somebody else is telling us what we have to do. And people are beginning to become a bit more kind of aware of the lack of democracy we have up here.
Yeah, they're kind of getting used to the idea that it wouldn't matter if it was the SNP or whatever party was actually ScotGov. Those would be the underlying principles, is what the powers that they do have and the powers that they do not currently have. So we don't have any particular events on, then it's really kind of organic, and we talk to each other and we try to, if not play to each other's strengths, we try to encourage each other's strengths. So it might be that somebody will know somebody who knows somebody, that we can bring things together, but it really feels really quite organic, as opposed to there being a complete structure over or a hierarchy or anything like that.
I would agree. By now we all know each other's good and bad points and use them to our advantage.
Nobody has any bad points, Lorraine.
No, exactly. Why did I even say that?
Less good. Is that kind of across the whole Yes movement, we'll end up borrowing a gazebo from Sterling Women for Independence because they've got one, so it saves us having to buy one. So we're limiting any expenditure. And as Tulare says, it's like, who's got contacts? So, and Lynn's is kind of our expert in not wasting anything, so we'll use things in different ways. It's like, how can we adapt and use that? What have we got we can use, rather than having... Fiona had suggestions for doing a week in a podcast about our Women for Indie meetings or gatherings or events, so she could kind of put that together. And then people had been, I think you find that the whole independence movement, probably before it, but more so since the referendum, there's a whole lot of creativity come out of it, be it poetry or music or artwork, and it's been kind of talking about that and harnessing that and sharing that as well. So as Lorraine says, people have been writing poems and reciting poems and doing that, and it's just another way to come together, and it's been good fun. It's been very cathartic, actually, writing poems, although I find that when I recite them, I'm sometimes spitting a little bit.
I just get right into character. I think I'm an actress. Because I hate my voice. And the first couple of times I heard it, I was cringing. But one time, somebody actually put a very nice compliment on the podcast site and said I had dulcet tones. Oh my God, I was shocked. And that encouraged me more. So she gently encourages you, and then I think you just become better at it, because you realise you might not like your voice, but it might resonate with others. So I kind of got over my horrible Tullabuddy accent quite quick.
I think it's, as Susan said before, though, it's about activism. And I think, even if you're sometimes uncomfortable with putting yourself forward for something, when there's a kind of a motivating factor like the quality of the future, then you're more motivated to try and go, oh, I'm going to cringe all the way through this, but I'm going to try it. And if it comes to something, all for the good.
When the first thing people say to you is, but you're English, I said, well, I didn't come here as a colonist. I mean, I was 19 years old. I just came here to have a good time and do all the normal things you do when you're 19. It didn't occur to me. You got all these different unis you could go to, and I came and visited Stirling, and I went, that's it. And I never went.
Glad.
I never had a job when I graduated. Maggie Thatcher, and I was shocked because I lived in the southeast of England, and even then you could get a job. I mean, you could get a job. You could not get a job in Scotland. But I'm not going back to England. I could have got a job.
You're a Scot now, Anne. You're a Scot now. Don't you worry.
This is my home. This is my home. I'm not leaving.
That we do kind of focus in on the different nationalities of people involved in the independence movement, because when you go on the marches, you will see Irish flags, Welsh flags, St George's flags, saltires, Palestinian flags.
Yeah. I think there was a Slovenian, the Inverness March. I remember.
Yeah, I've seen them.
Catalonia flag.
Isle of Man, Catalonia. It's a complete cross section of flags that are there, and one of the from another country.
The birth country.
Yeah.
But this is just this thing is just a diversion, though, isn't it? We want to decide our own future. That seems to me pretty normal. That's the way most countries carry on.
I think there's a correlation up here as well that, I mean, obviously it's not decided at all about what kind of relationship an independent Scotland would have with the EU after independence, but I don't think I've seen anything to dispel the idea that EU citizens wouldn't be welcome in independent Scotland, in contrast to what we're seeing coming out of Westminster.
But we have done, so for example, in September, there was a Yes Clackmannanshire event, a wee local event, just down at a local community centre, and we had some of the Yes bikers there, and we had Yes Stones, and we had stalls, and we had a wee march through the town, we had some of the
Alba Pipe Band,
Sheldon, the Great Dane, leading the march through the town, but that was funded, SNP branches helped to fund that. We got funding from SIC as well. And in the Yes Clacks, there's SNP members, Green Party members, socialists, yeah. There's people that are not affiliated with any political party as well. So it's kind of there's maybe debates around particular policies, but everyone's in agreement at the end of the day that what we want is independence to then control our own futures and build our own futures and make Scotland a better country for everyone that's living in Scotland.
I think it is more grassroots than party political.
Yeah, I think the likes of the Yes and the Women for Independence are, if we are members of political parties, that doesn't come into it. We're all there as Women for Independence, and with the one goal in mind. And we bring different experience and different knowledge as well. So, which is good, because you've got people that have worked in NHS, people that have been in teaching and policing, people that work in local authorities, and it's just
people who live in the real world as opposed to people who live in the London bubble.
Or the Westminster bubble.
Aye.
Because that's what you see about the Scottish MSPs and the Scottish MPs. When you look at their backgrounds, they're not career politicians. You've got doctors, you've got teachers, you've got lawyers. There's a whole range of backgrounds, and as Neil says, it's real life, real people that have done real jobs and been out there in the real world and know what it's like.
You meet them walking down the street, don't you? And
because I know why you support independence, because you talk about it on the radio. It's about all the things that you've told me about how you come together and you meet and you plan, and it's the behind the scenes of how do you organise a group like Women for Independence. But I'm doing that for the whole Yes movement, the whole independence movement. But where this is going is I'm hoping to, I'm writing a book which I'm hoping will be in Cambridge University Press about the independence movement.
How many other groups have you been involved with or interviewing? Or
I think you lot are about number 25 at this point.
So what other groups have you spoken to then, Dave?
All the Yes groups, a lot of the Yes groups, mostly in Glasgow and Edinburgh, unfortunately. I'm trying to get outside of the central belt.
I mean,
which I think now we're so much more educated and aware ourselves now, aren't we? And it's like,
well, a lot of us had never been political campaigners, but now we've got a few campaigns behind us. We're kind of...
There's such a gap between us and everybody here, all of you now, there's such a gap between you and just picking an average person in the street and their political awareness. And it was I think it was you that said, Lynn, you know, about no, people don't understand how devolution works. They're still, regardless of all that massive effort and all our learning, I don't think that hasn't filtered out to the... I would like to hope that Scotland...
I have to disagree, Anne. I have to disagree. I'm sorry, I have to disagree. I think because we've had so many elections the last few years and we've had so much coverage. I mean, we've had 3 general elections, a Scottish election, a European election, council elections. I think there's been that much coverage politically with Brexit that people are more educated. Plus, the younger ones that's coming up are desperate for change because of the environment, and they're making it their purpose to become better educated, in my opinion. My no voting butcher, just the other week when I went up, I've argued with him and walked to his shop. I couldn't believe it. He was going, Nicola got them telt, and I was like, wow. I mean, so that's just an example of people opening their own eyes.
I think it's been a boon.
I think there's
Westminster the way they are. It's been a complete boon because it's drove people to see what we can and what we can't do.
Yes, if we're representative of a new Scotland, then wow.
Listen, it's been absolutely lovely meeting you, all of you.
Nice to meet you too, David, and I'm glad you're not a plant.
You're right to worry about that. You're no wrong to worry about that. But it's about something bigger than independence for you lot, is the feeling that I'm getting. It's you try and do something. You're a force for good in the local area, which I sort of knew anyway. But it's nice to hear you say it.
I mean, we start talking about whatever, you know, but it always kind of comes back round to it because it is at the heart of everything. I think some people would shy away from that. They think they don't understand politics or it doesn't impact on them. And we've had people say that to us before. But then when you start talking to them and explaining things and they go, all right, oh yeah, I see, oh yeah, it does, and making people, you know, aware that their vote counts and they really should use their vote. And
I've never had so many OAP friends as what I do now, just for going to the marches. It's great.
Well, that's how I got to know Robbie. Well, I actually got to know him because he's one of the Dumb Family group. But we go through, he can't do the marches, but he finds he's got his disabled badge. He just finds himself a good perch somewhere along the route and just talks to people.
I've got a wee friend Ross that does that. She sits at the end. Ross sits at the end, Anne, and just enjoys the whole atmosphere and people coming in. So there's people that aren't even taking part of the marches.
Well, that's when they talk about the numbers. Well, you need to count all the people lining the streets as well, because a lot of them have come through specifically for the march.
It's always surprised me how, because if you remember in the referendum, there was this big thing about pensions, they'll never vote for yes and they'll lose their pensions. But since I've started doing this, so many of it, basically everybody I speak to is a pensioner. Do you know that runs a yes group? Not all of them, but it's
no, we do have a lot. We have a lot more than what people credit us with. Fed up with all the OAPs, including my own parents, putting pressure on me and saying, I want to see independence before I die. I'm fed up with
Yes.
that. I'm fed up with that
Well,
one.
I want to see independence before I die.
Exactly. I'm like, I am trying.
Chocolate tell Boris Johnson.
Right, I'm going to have to go.
Scotland a better country for everybody that lives in Scotland, regardless of where you came from originally. If you live in Scotland, you're a Scot as far as we're concerned, you know.
So that's it for this week, but obviously tune in next week for another episode of the Clacks WFIs in conversation, and join us with a hot beverage in one hand and a soul tire in your heart.
Indylive.radio.